about it.
What email?
Did you not get my
Is that the
email
one
either?
about our committee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't get an email.
Talk to a board.
Was it on Prospect?
So,
You're officially live. So.
okay.
I don't check my Prospect every day, so
No,
that's fine.
you too.
Oh,
Just
sorry.
FYI. I don't care what you do, I'm just telling you.
No, I didn't get the email because I
You're
didn't
on your
check my
own.
Prospect
Oh, okay.
account. When did you send it?
When did we
The
meet?
10th.
The 10th.
Okay.
I didn't get,
You didn't get it all?
Grace got it, no.
Did you check your Prospect?
I
one?
checked everything.
Okay.
Really?
I'm sorry, I'm bad about checking the Prospect one because I need that one particular laptop. It's a key.
Yeah,
I'll check it tomorrow. I'll let you know. I haven't
Okay.
looked at it.
Just some light reading for each of you.
It's never light reading, Tim.
Nothing to
You
do
have
with tonight's
a key
meeting.
to your phone?
Just anything with the school
Like
count
take
on
one, pass
IKEA,
it
so.
around. Oh,
Take
okay.
one down, pass it
They're all
around.
the, no,
As
they're
long as I
not all the
remember to
same.
have it.
It's
Oh.
it's a series.
Oh.
Oh.
It's like a
Oh,
serial
well, let
novel.
me peruse it quickly and I will.
is that the one you did?
Is he
Um,
planning a meeting is the question?
That's the one I sent it to. But
I'm not planning any more meetings. Enough meetings.
I don't know.
super.
I don't know my email address.
I don't know mine
I'll be honest with you.
Okay, that's nice.
And there seems to be, yes,
Okay.
we'll connect.
Okay.
Okay.
If I didn't get it, I'll check tomorrow, Matt.
Okay.
If I didn't get it, I'll contact you.
Thank you.
All right, you ready to begin? All right, let's call the meeting to order and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call, please?
Ann Pierce, Rebecca Johnson.
Carol Locke.
Tim Broderick?
Matt Jazokis?
John MacArthur?
Heidi Duford.
Okay, agenda review. Anyone have anything they want to add or subtract? All set?
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
One second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I guess Karen's running about 5 minutes late, so she'll be here
Okay.
soon. Okay. The minutes of October 12th, 2022. I wasn't at that meeting, so.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes from October 12th, 2022. One second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I abstain, because I wasn't there. Alrighty, so first public input on agenda items. Does anyone have anything? Sorry, I should speak into the mic. Anyone want to speak to anything on the agenda? All right, seeing no public input, I'll close public input and we'll go on to informational items. So the first item is enrollments, which October and November. So are there any questions or concerns? Did everyone have a chance to look at those? I have to train myself to go from the year before to the next year so I can see how drastically it changed because. All right, if there's no questions or comments about that. The financials for October 2022. Heidi, did you want to speak to anything?
If there's any questions, I can try to answer them.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for her? Did you have a chance to look at it?
Look at it, I don't have anything.
No questions.
I didn't have any questions. I looked it over today. I get a little swimmy when I start looking at all the numbers. I'm like, well, okay, here we go. All right, I trust you implicitly, Heidi. All right, here are the two magazines, District Administrative magazines, if anyone would like to. You each have a copy, or there's copies here of the full magazines. You just have the covers. So if you're interested, you're welcome to have those. Okay. The next item on the agenda was submitted by Rebecca, the GBAB, Transgender and Gender Nonconforming Students. And this, actually, all of them were submitted by you, correct?
That's
So, JBAB-R and BGC. They're under informational items in case anyone has any questions or comments.
So the changes, these markups are yours?
That is correct. Yep. And then the additional JBAB-R would be a supporting procedure that accompanies the changes.
So did you get that off of the School Board Association's website?
I did not. There's other school boards that are incorporating similar
okay.
policies.
Okay. Otherwise, I was pretty impressed that you wrote it. It was pretty
Hey,
well
all right,
said.
I did this myself.
Um,
It took me a little while to just figure out the strikeout and add. And then I did put in the Alton district policy, and the reason why I wanted to note that was, just when JBAB was originally adopted and approved at the 2020 meeting that most of us were not board members at. It was interesting that the policy was introduced, first and second read was all approved in one meeting.
Okay,
Whereas this policy adoption states that there should be at least 2 weeks between first and second read. So my concerns, many of them, but one is being that there was a first and second read policy adoption all at one meeting in under 4 minutes. And then we went into COVID, and then I'm afraid that parents haven't seen this policy, aren't aware of the policy. It was stated at the September meeting that I actually wasn't at, that we review policies and then we discuss it with the community and decide as a community and a board whether to adopt policies or not. But the way this policy was adopted, there was no community involvement. So,
I remember some sort of last minute, it's not unusual to go from first reading to final reading in a policy, or at least that's been the history. It usually has to do with some compliance to law or standards, or,
Right.
oh, we haven't done this yet, we better get it.
yeah.
the last
When-
superintendent stated several times that it was law, but my concern is that the policy itself is not law.
When was this last reviewed? I'm sorry, I missed that part if you said.
February 10th, 2020, it was adopted.
So Rebecca, are you aware that there's legislation pending about parental approval? So my concern is that if we're gonna have to rewrite the policy once that's passed, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna pass. So I wanna make sure we do it right. Not that you weren't right, but I'm saying that we need to make sure we use the policy and run it by the lawyer. In other words.
Oh, absolutely. So my intention is to have this reviewed by the policy committee, by the lawyer. Most of the changes that I am introducing in this policy include parental involvement and a procedure versus just a vague JBAB policy, and there's no parental involvement and there's no procedure.
Right, so I think by law, we're going to have to involve parents, so I'd like to be able to see what the law says before we rewrite the policy. Do you
Oh,
understand what
yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
My intention is to have
So-
this, whatever the next step is, to get it to,
We should have that by the spring, for sure, once the legislative season ends.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to adopt one that's rewritten now and then have to rewrite it again, because I know the laws are very specific coming from the state, and I know the lawyer needs to be involved, and Tim needs to be involved too, so.
right. But I don't
Okay.
want to wait until spring with the current policy. So whether we need to have the policy committee and the lawyer look at it, or what we need to do, but
Well,
there's
who's
other
on the
schools that have
policy
adopted
committee?
it, including the parents already, so.
Who's on the
We don't have
policy
a policy
committee? Do we
committee
have
in
one?
ACS.
We only have it at the
We
high
should,
school
though.
level.
We should have a
I was
policy
thinking about
committee.
that, yeah.
Yeah, see, I didn't know
It saves a
that.
lot of time.
I apologize for being late. Are we on agenda review?
We already
No,
did
we're
that.
on-
Oh,
We
we're already
whipped through.
down in, okay.
Yeah, sorry, we whipped right through it, Karen. So,
And if you want to have a separate policy committee, that's certainly board's prerogative. We spent, the joint board's policy committee and I spent about 2 hours going through this year's legislative changes recommended by the School Boards Association and prepared those recommendations. I was going to offer you tonight to simply work in my office to adapt those to this school and bring the same set. Has nothing to do with what you're talking about right now, but for policy changes in general, we could bring you the same ones that committee already spent the time reviewing and that you already have for first reading in SAU 301. We could give them to you in December and move forward with those without having to assemble another committee, but you're certainly entitled to form a policy committee if that's what you want to do.
So how do you review and approve policies at ACS then, just via the board?
Oh, yeah. It takes up a lot of, if there's a lot of debate on the policy
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of wordsmithing, it takes up a lot of time in public session. discussion
Right.
when we're doing it. Usually the SAU is bringing us something that's been brought forward from the School Boards Association or from the attorney.
Mm-hmm,
They're doing a lot of the legwork.
right.
But that's the only reason I'm really in favor of a committee, because it really takes a lot of that deep look at it out of,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a lack of transparency, it's an efficiency thing.
Mhm.
And then those people bring it forward to the full board, so.
I guess my question is, with all the shared services and the, you know, alignment, wouldn't it make sense to have it be a joint policy? Wouldn't it make sense to have the same policies in,
I would think so.
you know? And I mean, if people wanna join the policy committee, that's totally fine.
So you've done all the
Another
legwork for
Spoken
that,
like a member
all
of the
those
policy
others.
committee.
If people would like to,
And so, and all those policies that you
It is a lot of
reviewed
work.
for Prospect, they're applicable to Alton Central?
yeah, and I think, you know, like Tim said, he could, if something needed to be tweaked,
You could do that.
specific to an elementary school.
Yeah,
Oh,
when,
sure.
when
That
we
would be-
receive the policies, the sections that it's relevant to change per school or per district are highlighted when we get the recommendations. So we already, I'm making it sound like I do this myself, Debbie already goes through those and sort of personalizes them for each SAU. So it would just be a matter of taking the same book that we already assembled, doing those things for SAU 72 and Alton Central School. And yes, if there's something that's unique that might be different between a high school and an elementary school, we would highlight that and bring it to your attention for your discussion here.
Because high school does not have this policy.
So, okay, so yeah, so we're talking about the annual policy update in general. This policy, and I gave you a memo, I think, 2 meetings ago that outlines this. This policy is different here than it is in SAU 301, and in case anybody cares, different than it is in SAU 86. They're all different. At the time these went into effect or were adopted, I was serving in SAU 301, so I worked only with the joint board there on how this was implemented there, and there is no policy JBAB as a separate policy at the high school. We did it differently through that policy committee process.
I'll just make a comment that, you know, for this discussion about this particular policy here, where we haven't had a systemic, cohesive way of going through policy between the districts, it's really irrelevant whether there's a policy at Prospect on how we treat this policy here that ACS already has, in my opinion.
Well, my concern is that right now, I'm not sure any of the changes that you've addressed will run by the lawyer. In other words, I don't know how it conforms. So I just feel like at this point, we have to table it until we figure this all out. Maybe have you and another board member meet with Tim and talk about, you know, the legislative changes, when they're gonna happen, how they apply, and then we can kind of hone it up, because you've made a lot of changes to the policy, and I don't understand the reasoning behind some of the changes, so I'd have to hear that. In other words, there are pieces to this policy that I think are perfectly fine that could stand, and therefore, that's just my personal opinion, having read through your changes, so I'd like to understand the changes better, but I'm not sure this is the time or the place to do that, if we should do it in a smaller group, or if you want to do it in the bigger group. Do you see what I'm saying, Rebecca?
It needs some deeper.
So it sounds like it needs to go to the attorney, because if we keep tabling it, we're gonna end up doing this all year long.
Well,
So-
not if there's changes in the law. If there's a change in the law, we have to go through it. So it'd be good to do the preliminary work now, figure out where the parental notification comes in, and once the law is passed, I think they're gonna pass the law. I don't think that's gonna be tabled. I think that's gonna pass on the state level. And then we have to put it into the policy by law, and I want it to be right. I don't wanna have to go back to the drawing board. So I don't mind being part of a mini committee going over just this policy, since you already did all that legwork, Ann, along with the Barnstable board member, and,
Yep.
want to meet.
I'd like to be involved in that discussion also, please.
So maybe a little committee meeting or something, rather than at a bigger board meeting.
If there are 3 of you, we'll have to post meetings as meetings of the Alton School Board.
That's true.
And that group would have the authority to make decisions on behalf of the Alton School Board.
Oh.
We really need 2 people.
We just want an informational meeting. I'm available, that's why I volunteered. I mean, I'm retired, so I'm able to go. Rebecca seems to have has a flexible schedule. I don't know how you feel about me being on the committee versus you, Karen. I know Rebecca has a vested interest in being on the committee.
I have vested interest also, because I think it's important to keep the policy we have. And I have issues with what was presented. And also, I understand why we're tabling it, but also this was presented in the packet without any origin of what who made the changes. It didn't have your name on it, so when we got the packet, it wasn't even clear what it was. And as far as ABR, that's a completely new addition to the policy, and I don't know what the source of that is. So I think there's a lot of work to do
What the source
Yeah,
was, yeah.
before we even get to a point of talking to a lawyer to check. I mean, I think that's something we don't jump to. We've got to talk about it as a board first if it's such a drastic change.
Well, if we're gonna have a public meeting, we might as well involve all the members then. I mean, I know.
I'd like to volunteer not to be on the committee.
Well, then we could just,
I'm happy to give Carol my questions and my comments for the meeting, if that makes it work.
I know that people don't want extra meetings, that's all, because Ann just went through this with the other policies.
It was over 2 hours, just to be clear, Tim.
Yeah,
Best
I-
night of the year
we've
so
been
far.
working on this kind of policy in another district, and it's been at least a year of just, there's so many subtleties around the law right now, particularly until this legislation gets passed. So it's not a one and done, it's, it needs some deep work for sure.
So,
Okay.
can we have the lawyer look at the language that Rebecca crafted, please, before we have a
Absolutely.
meeting? Would that be easier? And then
Yeah,
we can
well,
know
whatever.
for sure.
Yeah.
And then
And then we
can
can
sit
set up a
together
time.
and you can
Yep.
explain in more detail what the changes were in your mind, why you crossed off a lot of the language, which I didn't understand. So that's what I'd like to understand, is
Yep.
why you crossed off all that language. And then we'll do that. Sound good, Tim?
Easy.
All right, so if you run it by the lawyer, then you can contact Rebecca and me, and we can pick a meeting time. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We're on to superintendent's report. I believe that's you, Matt, right?
Let
Well,
her go.
you're the one who did the report that I read, but I know Tim has something to give us.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to jump. You also have Building and Grounds report on your agenda, but let's do it now.
All right, so I'll let you go
Instead,
first,
I think
Tim.
on the
Sorry.
table, everybody has, I'm looking at Debbie again, sorry.
H.L.
On
Turner?
H.L. Turner letterhead, there's a construction cost estimate followed by construction drawings. This is a simple one. We can do it here. I decided that we could do it here at the table instead of having a separate meeting
Okay,
on this because the amount of money available in the ESSER 3 grant is $306,655, the amount of money to fund construction
Okay.
outside of the design work that's already been funded. So the main phase of the project, which is the gymnasium, is estimated here at up to $380,535. Now, almost $50,000 of that is contingency, but up to $380,000. The cost to include the music rooms that are behind and adjacent to that space and served by the same mechanical systems would be another $9,200. So if we treat those together as the base bid, you're looking at a maximum estimated at $389,735. We've got $306,655 in the grant. That leaves $83,080 if we wait until later in the year to see what the financial condition of the district is in the spring. You could either encumber money from surplus funds from this fiscal year, or post a public hearing, and then as agents to expend, use money from the Building and Grounds Capital Reserve Fund to make up that potentially $83,000. We would also have a real bid in hand by then, so we'd have an actual price. This is just a construction opinion and estimate. So if we go out to bid, we could do that before Christmas at this point, if you're okay with this, and on those two pieces. Now, that leaves on the table the front hallway and those 6 classrooms off that hallway. That would be another $316,000. We have neither a grant nor capital reserve option to fund that amount of money at this time. So if that's something you wanted to do, my recommendation would be you treat that as a separate project at a future date.
How much is in the contingency fund?
About $441,000, but I only know that because Heidi told me right before the meeting. Thank you, Heidi.
Gee.
But it sounds like it would make sense to possibly include the music room.
It's only $9,200.
Right.
Yeah, it's some duct work. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Some controls and some duct work.
So what are you looking for?
Just somebody make a motion and let us know it's okay to move forward with the scope being the packaged air handler for the gym and the music rooms, but leaving out the hallway and 6 classrooms. That's what we're really looking for.
I move.
Can I ask a question before we make a motion? Just
Yeah, but
'cause
there's a discussion.
Yeah, we discussed that.
But it has to do with the options, not with a motion on, it's just a question about options. I was just curious on, as far as comparing option 1, I guess there's only one. Oh, well, the adjacent hallway and the 6 classrooms. As far as deciding on the gym instead of that area, is that because the gym is worse off as far as?
The gym was what you
Air
asked us to
problem?
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
we approached this as a project to put new air handling in the gym,
Right,
new
it's
HVAC
just
in the gym.
the first time I'm seeing the comparison to the 6 classrooms in the hallway, that's why I was wondering.
I think whether, would you prioritize the 6 classrooms over the gym isn't something we thought about because we were looking at it as an add-on to the gym project, but Sean's here. If it's okay for him to.
I was just wondering how they
Okay.
compare to each other and why one is a priority and one isn't, or
Well, the
how we
gym-
came across.
I'm sorry. We've always talked about getting ventilation in the gym due to sports events, functions, and that's where we can host the most amount of people at one time. It's always been extremely uncomfortable in the gym anytime other than the winter. And so by adding the ventilation, we can host the capacity in there, 440, comfortably. And the ventilation, for the classrooms in the hallway, was something that is also off of that main steam boiler plant. So we were thinking, okay, well, if we're gonna do the gym, let's see how much it would cost to do the rest of everything off of that boiler plant. So that's why we were looking to do possibly those 6 classrooms in that hallway, to do completely everything attached to that boiler room.
So there are large gatherings in the gym, which is people more together.
Right, that makes sense to me.
It makes sense to me
And it is,
to do the gym.
that gym is,
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
believe me.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
So, and we'll have to go before that committee before we propose a new 300,000. The second one would have to go.
If you want to do the hallway and 6 classrooms, we'll work with Sean on the long-term capital plan for the school and see where that might fit in. But yes, then what Carol's referring to is
Our
we've
committee.
informed the town's CIP committee of the school's plans to fund on a level annual basis money going into the Building and Grounds Fund so that we don't have big spikes, unexpected, big capital outlays one year because we thought some big project was a good idea and then another year we don't. Instead, we try to level it out over time. So we have a plan in place, but it gets revised every year to build up to the next thing would be, it would be the next boiler replacement would be coming out of that fund. And when I say next, I mean after finishing the cafeteria renovation, which we're gonna talk about later when we get to warrant articles, because this year would be the 3rd and final contribution for that project. So it could be finished this summer, and then we'd be building for 1, 2, 3, 4 more additional years after this one toward the next boiler replacement. But again, when you're doing $500,000 projects, going to the town and asking for $500,000 all at once, and then nothing for 3 years, isn't really how folks want you to do this. So instead, we're asking for level contributions to the building maintenance fund every year so that we can do these projects as they come along. Now, coming back to these 6 classrooms, we'll have to talk to Sean and get an opinion about where they would be prioritized in the capital plan.
All right, so I move, that we go out to bid for the gym air handler along with the music room option.
Second that. Was there more, Pam?
That's it.
Okay.
Any discussion? Okay, in that case, have a vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
I only have one other thing to mention tonight, and that is that the previously embargoed, am I stealing your thunder?
Nope.
The previously embargoed New Hampshire SAS mandated testing data the testing is done in the spring. It came out last week, so we're in the process of crunching those numbers, and we'll bring you a trend report that goes back over, because there was a year with no testing during the pandemic, we'll probably go back 6 years, so that you'll get 5 years' worth of data. And hope we'll have that for you at your next meeting.
Okay, great.
Great.
On to you, Matt.
All right, in your packet, you had my report, a couple of things I'd like to highlight. On December 14th, it's an early release day. Faculty, staff from ACS will be meeting with and collaborating with Barnstead in reviewing the ICANN statements. Again, this is all around curriculum alignment. To take a look at each of those statements and to identify to which standard they belong to. If there is the collaboration or the thought process that there needs to be a rewrite of that statement, they can do so, or change where they feel like that statement may go. Then we're gonna be looking at identifying the skills that they need to, the students need to accomplish in order to show proficiency within that particular standard or domain. And then to develop a scope and sequence so that it's consistent in both schools. Certainly this is going to take multiple meetings and things of that nature, but this is step number 1, and we'll be using our early release days. Potentially we might have to do some summer work as well to really finalize this. But that is the process that we'll be using for the remainder of this school year. As I brought before, in terms of reporting out on metrics other than our state assessments, John and I have been working along with his team reps to identify those metrics that we want to start to report out on our data dashboard. Again, we're looking at what our core beliefs and mission is, and really certain to look at that whole student first is just the state testing pieces of it. I feel comfortable in saying that probably in our January meeting, we'll be able to report out on our first go-around, and that'll include the data that goes along with that piece of it. So, and as I reported out at the well, not that one, Professional Development Master Plan. Again, we're working in collaboration with Barnstead. We met on November 7th. And again, a lot of good open communication. We identified the pros and the cons of the current Prospect Mountain Plan as it pertains to elementary schools. Looked at the assessments that will be used to gather data, and we began to start to draft the plan. Again, our hope is to have a plan for both schools to the faculty in January, then to the school board for approval, and then headed off to the DOE so that we have it in place for the next school year. So great group of people working together on that part of it. Again, we're still in the infant stages of looking at a system-wide assessment, setting up some meetings with folks from a couple of different assessment products to start to look at the pros and cons of each.
That's really good work, Matt, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That collaboration between elementary schools is very encouraging, especially.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah,
Trying to get there.
in both cases, the October 7th date and then working with this particular committee, it's been really positive, a lot of good conversation, and oftentimes I feel like I'm stepping on their toes because they get in such good conversation about what's going on and the different things. It's like, okay, we gotta move into this direction, but it's all good, so.
All right, thanks. We're on to information technology report, which you all should have in writing. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, anyone? No?
Looks like the same report we saw last week, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. And then we also have special education report. Does anyone have any questions about that? So we had Barnstone and Alton para educators all got together for
Together
professional
here,
event.
yeah, for a couple of afternoons, 3 weeks ago?
And 5 special ed staff were CPI trained, which is a great program.
And we offer it at least once a year. We're required to offer it to them
Sure.
once a year
You
by,
have-
by
you
our
have a
agreement
trainer?
with them. And we do, we have a trainer on staff.
We do. Oh, good. Okay. That saves a lot of money.
I got my research.
You
Jim
did?
got his research.
Good. All right. No other questions about that? Principals report?
All right, so, lots of community things. We had the Spooktacular, if you haven't checked out the Facebook page. Lots of photos there, tried to highlight all of our kids. It was an awesome event, awesome weather. If you don't remember, we had to postpone it a day because of bad weather. And it turned out to be a wonderful decision to do it on the half day. The weather cooperated. It was just a really positive event for our kids, for the community. There's a huge turnout of people, so that was great. Recently, last week, we had a huge thank you to Detective Sergeant Paincho, Officer Davis, and Mrs. Paincho, and also, who's not on my report but is sitting right there, so I have to embarrass him, our Buildings and Grounds Director, Sean Asdot. Sean came to me with the idea of, we don't have flag stewards here. So we talked about it, and I was like, you're absolutely right. We don't have flag stewards here. So Sean and I worked with figuring out where in the school it would fit. Turns out 5th grade is an awesome spot for it. Talked to the teachers, Miss England, and we got together, and they played all about learning about the flag, the importance of it, why we have it, how you care for it, pretty much everything you can think about a flag. Our kids were truly stellar at this presentation. We had it in the gym. He did a training with the kids, and now we actually have flag stewards that are out there taking care of our flag almost independently. We tried today to do it independently. Unfortunately, the knot was a little too tight, and Jim and I had to go out there and untie that really tight knot. And Sean to the rescue, who was coming here for the board meeting tonight, and he definitely bailed us out too, so we got that flag down. But huge thank you for, it was a great meshing of the community and our staff, and it all started with Sean coming to me with a question, and I think it's wonderful. Other things we have our self team meeting that happened, going off our behaviors in the 4 pillars of our core values, which I have listed. Veterans Day Assembly. I'm full of thanks tonight. Special thanks, especially obviously to our crew that got it all together. Our 2 electives really stood out for this, and that was Scott Bickford's elective and Derek Papasino's elective, who worked really hard to get a lot of our performances done on video. Totally over the top, awesome with these. Hopefully we're going to be able to share video out soon once we remove some no photo kids from that we can't publish. But once we have that, hopefully it's something we can share out to see that portion of it. But we had over 50 veterans come from the community. It was nice to have it back in person again. And it was just wonderful. The band played, the chorus sang, kids performed. We had breakfast. Thanks, to Sam Cowan for making sure they all got together. So we had a breakfast to greet them. It was just awesome to have it back again. So I wanted to report out on that. This Thursday, a crew of us are going to the New Hampshire Partners in Education ceremony, which is for our volunteers. We're a Blue Ribbon School again. We have over 75 volunteers on our active roster, so we will be going to get that on Thursday in Concord. And the end of trimester is already upon us on December 2nd. I think that's everything for me this month.
Any questions for John?
But I think my oldest was in the kindergarten when we had the first Veterans Day program. Comes up on my Facebook every year.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's nice that we have such a long-standing tradition here.
I mean, we had it virtually for the past couple of years. It was nice to actually have it back. And it was lots of smiles, but lots of tearing up just out of pure emotion on that day. It was just an awesome day, so.
All right, thanks, John. Sean, your building and grounds report, did you want to speak to it?
Anybody have any questions? I'm happy to answer it.
I didn't have any questions.
No.
Building looks wonderful, as usual.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on to action items, the 23-24 budget, which you have before you. Thank you for the summary, that helped a lot.
Yeah, so we had gotten, our health insurance rates, since the last time we met. So there is a decrease, and of course, it came from Prospect. So you'll see a lot of smaller adjustments, with the shared services, and that's due to, getting the final figures for health insurance and also unemployment workers' comp. And then here, for Alton, I did pretty much the same. It was 10% to 8% increase, which is saving us a good $48,000 overall. The other, because we've done the Prospect Mountain budget, it's still preliminary, but it's a better number, so I put that in there. Remember, we just had a placeholder of last year's number. So with that number, there is another savings of $46,000 roughly, and that's due to the decrease in the actual ADM percentage that you'll be contributing to your assessment. And the other large decrease was the one-to-one high school paras. After talking with special ed and getting updated figures, I was able to decrease the one-to-ones, which was another $43,000. So overall, I mean, those right there are about $130,000 in reductions. However, I also have to add in the federal project transfer, which is $100,000, and then the billable that Alton is billing the other two districts for the SAU usage, and also the mail courier. If we total that, there's an offset of revenue is $116,000. So really, there's a net zero there once we put the revenue into place. So overall, from the beginning of where we ended at the last meeting to the end tonight, there's really a decrease of $7,535. But if you look at the summary, there really was a $130,000 reduction.
And a decreased lawn care.
I did find out it's plowing as well. So
Ah.
we don't have a plowing line, so it's all under landscape line. So it was a combination of plowing and landscaping,
Thank you,
so I did find that out.
Seemed like a lot to mow the lawn.
It did, it really did.
Yeah, it definitely was.
I like the way this is all presented, thank you.
Yeah, it really is helpful to have the summary sheet.
Yes, very helpful.
So,
So-
okay, if I make a motion?
Yeah.
I move, that we accept the FY '24 proposed budget at $16,039,875.50.
Second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, just that I had marked as open from our last meeting about math software, because we had a large increase in the math software, and there was a question around whether that was an annual fee, or whether that was an outright purchase.
So Matt had done some discovering. There's another additional 7,000?
Yeah, approximately 7,000, yep. So I met with John, and we went over the software that we have and really looked at the usage and different things in that, make sure we weren't overlapping and stuff like that. So the big one was the math workbooks and the software for our Eureka Math program. When you look at the breakout, there's a couple different things. One, There was about a $3,000 savings for what they quoted us on. We had added in a percentage of increase, which we didn't need to do because the quote's good until July of '23. The other part is that there was the workbooks, there was also teacher editions, and then there was the software, online software for the assessments. We do not need the teacher editions, they all have their teacher editions, so we were able to reduce that down by another $3,000 on top of that. But it is a annual purchase with that Eureka Math program. So you can look at that around the $20,000 mark each year at this time. So,
Everything's an annual purchase now.
yeah, yeah. And the other part was, there was Math Seeds, which was another software program that we removed as it was overlapping with others.
So what was the total decrease compared to the last time we looked at it?
It was, let's see, I believe it was $7,030, but let me just double check.
Got you, the email.
I was gonna say, you want a copy of it?
$7,390, is that?
There you go. That number.
Thank
Faster
you.
than all
That number. That was good.
That's good. I'm glad that you looked into that.
Yeah, thank you. And I wrote down something about Chromebook cycles. I don't really remember what our discussion was at this moment.
We need to make one, I think, that's what
Oh,
my
we just need
notes
to-
said.
Yeah.
Define it.
I've been talking with the IT folks about 4-year purchase cycles, not 3. And frankly, talking with the principals and Matt about, let's be smart about what we're expecting devices to be used for at grade levels where we have 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds. It's just not the same as,
Yeah,
and,
I
and,
agree.
and we should be very careful about the extent to which we're even allowing computer use at some of those grade levels. They shouldn't be going home, except in the case of there's gonna be a potential day out of school or something like that, but that's different. So we're working on collectively creating some procedures around that. And then what that means for purchasing, based on our most recent discussion, is that we would potentially take a set of devices that's been used through its normal life, maybe 4 years, and then put those devices on carts at the kindergarten level, where frankly, I hope there's not a whole lot of computer use going on,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It shouldn't be, and they don't need brand new, like, it doesn't make sense to have a 4-year replacement cycle and have those brand new devices start with the children who aren't using them,
Correct.
and then go with them for 4 years so that when they finally want to use them, it's a 4-year-old device. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, 5th through 8th, fine. Buy the new device, hand it out at 5th grade, go through 8th, no problem. So that's where we've been talking. It's not uncommon, and I would actually have to look back at this school's records for schools to be on 3-year replacement cycles, but it's just not necessary. And before the pandemic, not every grade level had computers, and since the pandemic, everybody has devices. They're Chromebooks. They're not $2,000 computers. These are $330
Right.
Chromebook devices. Nevertheless, we can definitely get that 4th year out of them. And
they
again,
had some iPads at those lower grade levels.
It was shared, yes.
Roll your eyes.
that's terrific.
You said
And so Heidi, we're essentially flat with this year's budget, correct?
Yes.
So like pretty much 0% change. It's
You're actually in the negative. You're down.
That's great.
Budgets are down across the system this year. Enrollment's down.
All righty. All those in favor of accepting the budget as is?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We're on to the warrant articles.
You don't need to vote the language yet. That's next month.
Okay.
But as of right now, I would expect you to have, and just as important, the town's capital improvement committee expects you to have a $150,000 or thereabouts. We'll work with Sean on the exact number. This is the 3rd out of 3 warrant articles to complete the renovation of the kitchen and cafeteria. So the first year was funded and a bunch of work was done. The second year was funded for the purpose of equipment purchasing, and then this would be the final funding year for the actual installation and renovation of the kitchen itself and maybe some parts of the cafeteria. I admit I don't know exactly the extent. But that's about a $150,000 article. The other one would be the first of a planned 5-year replenishment into the Building and Grounds Fund for the next boiler replacement. This year at $80,000, with the plan that in the future 4 years would be $130 each. But because of the other article, having that $150,000 item on this year, we talked to the CIP committee about doing this at a lower level for the first year. Those are the two capital items. You have some recurring articles maybe. You're done with the technology fund, right? You built that up as planned for 3 years, so that's over. Do you have another recurring article that you normally do
No, but
here?
we'll have a teacher's contract as a warrant article, correct?
Provided you come to an agreement with the teachers, there would be a warrant article to standardize their contract, yes. And also provided the joint board comes to an agreement with the Para-Educators Association at the high school, there would be a warrant article to fund 51% or 49%.
Whatever we are. at this
Whichever one
point.
you are, of the cost
Changes
of
with
that
the wind.
over whatever the term of that
We
deal is.
usually have a warrant article for the high school field.
Yes,
Yeah, what articles might come from the joint board is a joint board discussion.
yeah, and it's
Um,
usually 15,000 for each town.
So we don't need to take action on the warrant articles then?
Just want to make sure that there aren't any others you'd like us to write. We'll have the language written in time for your, because you do, in order to be ready for SB2, it's got to be done in December. So we'll have the language written for you for your next meeting and put them into the packet so that you can see them ahead of time and vote on them. So if there's anything else you'd like, speak now. Well, yeah, it's not a cost item. We're just doing budgets right now. But yeah, when it comes to other things that could be on the warrant, certainly open enrollment is important. And if this is an opportunity you want me to take to talk about it for 30 seconds in public, I will. But with the continually declining enrollment at the high school, primarily due to simply population realities, rural schools have all been getting smaller for the last 10 years or so. And considering some of the options that students have in the surrounding area, it seems like Prospect Mountain High School is a place that some students who live in adjacent communities might want to attend. So if the voters in Alton, on Alton's warrant in March, and the voters in Barnstead at the school district meeting they hold in March, each approved a warrant article allowing the high school SAU 301, to become an open enrollment district, then under New Hampshire law, any student who resides in the state of New Hampshire would be allowed to apply for admission to Prospect Mountain High School. And if admitted under terms developed by the joint board at the high school and approved by the State Board of Education, any student who resides in New Hampshire could then attend Prospect Mountain High School, provided they took care of their own transportation, with excess special ed costs being billed back to their towns of residence. The revenue that goes along with open enrollment under the law is up to 80% of the receiving school's actual per pupil cost. So let's use a round number and say that Prospect Mountain High School's per pupil cost is roughly $20,000 per student. That means that the Prospect Mountain Joint Board would send a bill to the district of residence of any student attending under open enrollment in the amount of about $16,000, 80% of the roughly 20. And according to the law, that's not a negotiation, it's not an agreement between boards, it's allowed by statute. So the bills go out and the bills get paid. So there is the potential for both increasing the number of students attending the high school, and the high school certainly has the capacity to take more kids. There are today 391 students enrolled at that high school, and I think the actual seating capacity is over 800. There have never been more than something between 600 and 650
650, I think.
enrolled there, but there have been.
Yeah.
And as recently as, I'd have to check my chart to be sure, but 5 years ago, there might have been 500 kids at that school. So we're 20% down from that just in about the last 5 years. So there are a lot of technical processes that have to take place for this to happen. I'll take care of the applications and paperwork that need to be done first for approval by the joint board and then for approval by the State Board of Education. But you are correct, thank you for bringing it up, that there would have to be an article on the warrant in March in each of the 2 towns. Only the legislative body, the voters, can make the decision to allow a district to become an open enrollment district or to have an open enrollment school. That was more than 30 seconds, but you knew that was gonna happen.
Very
Always is, always is.
All righty, personnel report.
I move that we accept the athletic stipends and co-curricular stipends as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty, we're on to our second public input. Is anyone interested?
Jason English. So I am a little let down that we're not going to talk about the JAB program policy right now. We kicked that can down the road already a couple months when Ms. Johnson wanted to talk about that. We didn't talk about it last month because of budgets. We're not going to talk about it this month because we got to talk to a lawyer. And it seems a little silly that, you know, when it's on the agenda for 2 months, that we would have, you know, maybe talked to an attorney beforehand. You're not going to answer the questions, but I'm going to ask them anyways. So does the current policy right now make it so that a teacher is prohibited from telling a parent that their child is interested in changing their gender? Crickets. Is the whole idea of this policy to basically start forming walls in between parents and teachers and restricting this communication? I would think that something that has a 75% suicidal rate, that you would want to get as many people involved, including the parents, that you would want. It just doesn't make any sense to me why we're going to continue to not talk about it. We're going to talk about it, you know, in secret, but, you know, in a meeting that nobody's going to know when that meeting is. Nobody's going to know what time it is. We're not going to have a clue. And then what's going to happen is we're going to let these kids continue to suffer through this policy still being active because you guys don't want to talk about it. And I think that's a disservice to our children. I think it's a disservice to our school. While I've been knocking on doors, I have talked to a few different homeschooling parents that have recently become homeschooling parents within the last couple of years. And the eerie part about listening to these people is their stories are all the same. They're all afraid of their children being in this school. They're afraid that their child is not safe here anymore. You know, you guys aren't listening to them. They're being victimized. When people are talking about instances of bullying, for some reason, and this is not just me, this is other parents now, homeschooling parents are talking about the fact that, you know, you guys are going, the schools are going after the bullies, and they're protecting the bullies and then further enabling it. And I just, you know, discrimination is bad, right? Everybody can agree discrimination is bad. So when we have an anti-discrimination policy already in place, I just don't see why adding this extra language and confusion to children that don't need to know about half this crap at second grade. It just doesn't make any sense. I know 3 minutes is up. Have a good night.
Thank you, Jason. Does anyone else want to speak?
Good evening, Richard Shea. I just have a very selfish request. When I look at these agendas, they're full of initials that I'm sure mean a great deal to people familiar with the education process. But for the average citizen, JBAB, I don't know what it is, and I wonder if it's possible without too much difficulty to spell those things out on the agenda, so that us folks that are not familiar with them will know instantly what they stand for. I would appreciate it if you could do that. Thank you.
Those letters I'm not supposed to respond, but,
Whatever you want, you're the chair.
thanks, I'm the chair. Those letters are followed by the description of what that is. So the letters designate the policy on transgender. So if you look at the JBAB, it says transgender and gender nonconforming students. That's the topic in that policy.
The letters don't actually mean anything.
Don't mean anything.
It's not a code.
A catalog.
Yeah, so there's no secrets, but we do use a lot of EduSpeak in schools.
And this is not just a New Hampshire thing, this is a school policy thing. These letter codes are actually meaningless. The first letter tells you kind of a category that it fits into, but even it doesn't correspond with an actual word. Yeah, it's
Well,
great.
since we're talking about, there's a good reference on the website under school board where it lists all the policies are available on the website.
Congratulations, you got them to talk to you. They don't respond to me.
Anyone else like to join public input? Okay, in that case, I'll close public input. Future agenda items. I have policies as needed, is what I have on my yellow sheet.
Yeah, we'll have a data report for you on the SAS over the last 6 years.
Okay,
In December or January?
Oh, December, we're working on it now. We just got the data the other day, we're crunching the numbers.
anyone else have anything you'd like to add to the agenda? I mean, obviously, it's fluid. We can add it whenever we want to. Okay. Alrighty. We have non-public tonight?
Yes.
We do. Can I have a motion to go into non-public, please?
What number?
It's on your agenda.
I move to go into non-public under RSA 91A:32A, C, personnel.
Second?
All those in favor, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, all right. We're going into non-public. Need to shut off our YouTube.
Yes.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Shauna.